Hey there. Anybody on? Let me just pull up my session here. Um, we've got I touched my face, so you can all take a drink. That's not why I touched my face. And in fact, I just came from the store. I get the funniest looks when I walk around my neighborhood and pick up trash and put it in the dumpster. I'll pick up sometimes the grossest trash, and I'm like, I'm fearless because I'm like, I used to. Hey, Ed. I think when you have kids and you change diapers, clean up all sorts of stuff, you don't really, uh, you don't really fear anything after that. And then also when you're managing an apartment building for as many years as I did and plunged as many toilets as I have, again, nothing, and I've cleaned up some gross things. So it's no big deal for me to pick up trash on the street and put it in a trash can. But people will look at me like, it's COVID, you're gonna die. Like, okay, whatever. I mean, I'm so afraid we're all like so like coddled right now with the masks and the hand sanitizer and 6 feet distance, everything. We're going to start dying of the common cold. I mean, I really want to go out and start licking doorknobs because I feel like I don't have my immunities, and all of a sudden we're all going to start dying of the most basic things. Michael Neal, good to see you. Bruce, as always, thank you. I mean, I just put in soloing as what we talk about. We could change that, but that soloing is a giant subject. Hold on, let me get a giant subject. So we may get more more philosophical than physical, or more philosophical than practical. But I hope to have some real good practical tips. Jeff Height, how's it going? Yeah, I just love it when people are by themselves with their mask on in their car. And I remember seeing someone said something on Nextdoor, which I hate that. I don't ever go on Nextdoor because I just hate it. It's the most passive-aggressive website in the history of the world. But I did see apparently someone said, oh, I can't believe people wear masks in a car, and some lady gave this giant dissertation as why she has to wear a mask in the car. I just felt like she shouldn't leave her house, basically, is what it was to me. So, but of course, I'm in a state where, the lockdown's still going on, the unemployment's still at 12, 13, 14%. Other states that don't have lockdowns, their unemployment rate's in the 4 to 5 to 6 range. So California's losing a lot of tax revenue, and so I just figure we're going to get our property taxes doubled and our income tax doubled and our sales tax is all going to double. They are going to double everything because they need the money. And I'm like, well, or you could just open everything up. And that's my 2 cents. Probably win the lottery before getting the virus. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just my luck. That would be my dad's luck. My dad was hard luck Strahle, man. It was. But I'll tell you, my dad really supported me doing music for a living. A lot. I mean, my mom not so much. I mean, she ultimately came around. My dad, and thank God, I'm just going to say, thank God I've got my name on a Bieber record not long before he died. It was like when I played with Bieber, and actually, I think at that moment I hadn't met him, but the first time I played on a Bieber record was on the acoustic version of the song Baby. And I think I even give him. Because that's what the hook was. And so my friend Kook, who was producing the record, Dan Cantor had done kind of this, vibe. But Kook wanted to hear more of the original kind of vibe, so I played on that. And then the record came out, and I bought a bunch of copies, and my name was on it, and I sent it. And to be honest, it was the first major artist that I'd worked with, and that was 10 years ago. You know, I was in my late 40s, and it was the first time I worked with an artist who everyone had heard of. And when I sent it to my dad, he got it in the mail. He opens it up. He's standing by the mailbox. He says, "Oh, what's this package from Tom?" He opens it up, and there's an old lady standing next to him. And she sees the Bieber record. She goes, "Oh, Justin Bieber. Oh, my granddaughters love him." And my dad was like, "Oh, okay, so this is legit, you know." So it was one of those things where I felt like as long as my career took to kind of get going, both my parents got to finally see it. And, you know, it's kind of one of those things. They never got to see us in a house. That was the sad thing. I was bummed about that. And my father-in-law, too. When I married my wife, I'm sure my father-in-law was like, "You're marrying a guitar player?" to Beth. I know he was. So, and, but my mother-in-law was just here, and she loved the house. And so that was a proud moment indeed. Yep, Michael. You know, it's just, you got to have those. And, you know, I think it's man and woman, but everybody wants their dad's approval. And even if their dad's an awful dad, sometimes people do some awful things to get their awful dad's approval. But my dad was cool. It was just, he just wasn't happy with a lot of his choices. And that's why he was really happy to support my choice, because professionally he didn't do what he wanted to do. And he did what he thought he had to do, which, you know, probably if you're graduating high school in 1949, that was not an uncommon thing to do. You know, most of our parents did that. You know, most of our dads did that. They did the job they had, you know. I saw a similar saying. I wish I could remember it now. It was on someone's Twitter handle. But I've heard this, that a soldier's son is a businessman's son is an artist's son is a soldier, and our soldier's son is business. And the whole premise of that is, if you're a businessman and you're wealthy, then your child can do whatever they want. And if they become an artist, then they're not paying attention to the day-to-days of a nation or whatever. And then their nation gets attacked, and then the next kid has to be a soldier, and then they win, and then it becomes a business. I guess, you know, it's something like that. It's probably more of a British thing, because they can go further back than we can. But so I put in the lesson number 115, soloing, and kind of with a big giant caveat. Everybody likes to solo, or everybody wants to solo. Everybody, you know, I said this just recently where, and myself was included. Guitar players will often spend 95% of their time practicing soloing. You know, the practice routine will be about soloing, and only about 5% of their time practicing rhythm playing. And when they actually get to the real world, and they're playing real gigs, they spend 95% of their time playing rhythm and only about 5% of their time soloing. If you're in a top 40 band, you might never solo. If you listen to top 40 today is not like it was back when I was playing in top 40 bands. You know, there was Toto, and, you know, we had Earth, Wind, and Fire and all sorts of stuff. So there were guitar solos and songs. If you're playing in if you're playing in a Led Zeppelin cover band, you're going to probably solo on every song. If you're playing in a Van Halen cover band, Jimi Hendrix, you're going to have to be a very, very good soloist. But if you're playing in kind of a wedding band where you're doing songs like Mustang Sally, and then you're going to do some current top 40 songs, things like that, you're not going to get a lot of opportunities to solo, especially if there's another guitar player in the band. And if you haven't been practicing playing rhythm, your rhythm playing is maybe marginal at best. So all of this talk about soloing is just to say it's a lot of fun to work on, but I've found that most of the time when I'm playing sessions, and I'm pretty much doing, thank God, I'm pretty much doing sessions every day. I mean, sometimes I'm doing 3 a days, which was like Wrecking Crew. If you've never seen the movie The Wrecking Crew, you got to watch it. It's very cool. Those guys were doing 6-a-days. So it was insane. I don't even know how they, it's just, I don't know how they survived. But Dire Straits, Dire Straits, he does a lot of solos. And so rhythm is, and there's nothing, I like playing rhythm. In fact, if you look at the great players like Django Reinhardt, where they're playing, they got a guy back there chopping out. They got a guy just chopping wood, was what we call it in the big band business. And there's no shame in chopping wood. The check's clear just the same. So, here I have a lesson named soloing, and I'm speaking out about how you shouldn't worry about it. No, it's not true. But the thing is, it's such a giant subject. And so there's so many things to learn, but at the same time, you can ignore all those things like scales and music theory and still be a great soloist. A lot of the best soloists, they don't know anything about music theory, but they also were probably only playing in one style of music. The guys that can go from a blues band to a bebop band to a rock band to a pop band to a country band, all that, like those guys, they're going to be more well-rounded musicians, and they're probably going to know how to read, or they're probably going to know about chord theory. They're going to know about scale theory, all that kind of stuff. So that's where those guys probably, and I kind of count myself more in that camp where I can kind of do everything, but I'm not good. I'm not great at anything, but I can sell myself. I can fool 99% of the people on any style, almost any style. I did turn down a banjo gig last week, remember? Yeah, Mark is great. I played Mark Knopfler's, he has a Loudon. I played his Loudon one time. It was at his guitar techs, and he said, "Oh, this is Mark." And I said, "Can I play you?" "Sure." I don't know if Mark would have approved, but... All right, I took a sip for no apparent reason, so that's a sip. You guys can take a sip, because I took a sip. That's another sippable offense. If I take a sip for no apparent reason. So when we talk about soloing, Vito was asked me a question on Discord maybe last week or a couple weeks ago. Bruce pointed it out, and he was like, "How come my solos aren't as melodic as this guy? I use I'm using pentatonics and I can't get it." Well, pentatonics are 5-note scales. So pentatonics are great for some blues stuff, but again, you're going to open up more doors if you can kind of add some other notes to it. Like we add a blues note to the pentatonic, that makes it a 6-note scale. And we've been doing that. We've also talked about diatonic scales. Now, I haven't done a series on diatonic scales. I may do that. We talked about modes, so you understand them. Do I ever do a run from the first string to the 6th string? Like up here, yeah. So, that's sloppy, but I might to end a song, I would totally do that. Probably more likely down than up, I don't know. You can see I'm using boxes. I'm using kind of pentatonic shapes. And then, I'm using this box, that box to get up the neck or down the neck. Usually that might be some kind of ending, like the song's ending. And you're like... And you slide off and make a funny face. That might be a scenario where I would do that. And that kind of lick too, what you're often doing is taking a lick, an idea, and you're just repeating it in 3 different octaves with maybe some slight variations. That would be a common way to take that descending. But there's far better soloists out there than I am. I mean, I can have a lot of fun, and we've talked about this too, about being in the zone. That's the place where you're playing your best, where just all the kind of worlds kind of, I don't know, collide or align. All the stars align, all the planets align, I should say, and the gravitational pull is such that it pulls the best solo out of your guitar, and that's, you know, arrived at. And oftentimes it's funny because I was about to say that you get there from knowing what you're playing over, and knowing what scales to use, or what your boundaries are. What notes are bad is probably more important than knowing what notes are good. And then being able to hear yourself really well, being able to hear yourself in context of the music really well. So if you're too loud, it'll be intimidating. If you're too quiet, you might hit a bad note and not know it. And then also having a tone you like. Those are all elements to getting you in the zone. And I was saying, knowing what you're playing over. However, what's funny is there's that first pass syndrome, which is you almost always, when you're in the studio and they're saying, okay, we want you to do a solo over this. Now, chances are, if I'm playing a solo over a song, I've already played rhythm on it. So I've already heard the song. So I know the song, but sometimes never does anyone say, hey, play over this, and hits the button, and they don't. Well, I actually have one. I'll try. Remind me about that. That would be Tom Howard. Remind me about that. So it's Tom Howard. Somebody write that down. Rest his soul. He was a friend and moved to Nashville. He was the one that spearheaded a group of South Pasadena people to move to Nashville, and they wanted us to come with them, and I didn't. And then that was when my career started taking off. It's kind of, it started getting better and better and better. It took a long time. I should probably write all this the career stuff down. Yes. Yeah, well, soloing is a lot about music in general, is about creating time. We talked about that with the Keith Richards. I still want to do that video. You saw my new video yesterday. That was kind of for Gary. Good morning, Gary. The warm-up thing. He said he's going to watch it 1,000 times. So I need your help, Gary. Right now, it's not even within my normal range of views on a video release. So, Mark Knopfler's collaborations are great too. Yeah, he also collaborated with a friend of mine. Got to work with him because he collaborated with I want to say a Slovakian artist, or I can't remember. Bosnian artist? No. But a friend of mine, they did, with my church, they did a mission trip where they were doing worship music in Bosnia, and they met this, like, the famous artist. It wasn't Bosnia, it was not Croatia. I can't think of it right now. But they ended up meeting this famous artist, and then they ended up producing his record. So, and then he paid, I guess he had money, and he paid for, like, Mark Knopfler to be on it. I think maybe there were a bunch of guitar players on it that were like, dang, my friend had to work with all of them. I'm like, are you kidding me? That's amazing. So, but yeah, and, a solo can be one note, I mean, think about, was it Fleetwood Mac, Lindsey Buckingham? What song was it that he basically, was it Go Your Own Way, or Don't Stop Thinking About? He did like some kind of one note solo thing. So, soloing doesn't mean, that you are going to be really busy, that you're playing a lot of notes, that you're, and last thing you want to, unless people are paying to see you go crazy on the guitar, the last thing you want to do is overplay. And I think a solo, part of the reason why I'm not, like, when I was doing worship, when I was in charge of worship and, doing arrangements and writing worship songs even, and being a worship leader and things like that, I rarely put solos in the songs because I didn't want to take away from the time that the church was supposed to be singing, because every time you did a solo, then they're just standing there. And then the other thing is, if I'm blazing on the guitar during a worship set, I don't want anyone out there to be tempted to worship me instead of God. And as a guitar player, you can't help but become a guitar god when you're taking a solo in front of 50 people or 5,000 people. So it was always something I wouldn't put into a lot of songs. So I kind of, and then the same thing happened in pop music, where pop's records got shorter and shorter. I remember just recently reading that back in 1985, the average intro to a song was like 32 seconds before the vocals came in. And in 2015, 30 years later, it was less than 3 seconds before the vocal came in. So with pop songs, they used to put guitar solos. I mean, of course, I posted on that a while back, I think on my Facebook page, about what's your favorite pop song solo, guitar solo. And I got a lot of people saying different bands, and I was like, oh shoot, I should have clarified that it was like a guest soloist, like Lukather like Eddie Van Halen on Beat It. Lukather played on Steve Lukather from Toto played on a lot of records and did a lot of solos, like "Talk to You Later" by the Talking Heads. I mean the Tubes, and that's actually a really great solo that whatever it is, it's in B. I remember that. And I know he does like a lot of runs on it, talking about, somebody asked me, do I do runs from, I haven't warmed up. I need to do my warm up. But more likely, I might be more likely to play a run on one string up the fretboard. Well, it's like, what is it? Let's see. Oh, is it? No. What? Oh, don't. No, it's here. No, it isn't. That's it. What is it? I might be more likely to do something like that. Now, that was probably not a solo. I'm guessing he probably did that 500 times until he got it right. I mean, I love Joe Perry, but I don't even know if that was Joe Perry playing that part. But to me, I think that sounds like a composed part. There are composed solos, and then there are solos that are improvised. And to the audience, they sound the same. And that would be a good question. Like, can you tell the difference between a solo that was composed, like in other words, they worked it out in advance, and a solo that was purely improvised? Generally in blues, well, that's not even true in blues. I mean, I think about a lot of blues players. If you play the same thing that was on the record, then you're playing something that was already composed. Oh yeah, Lukather, that's right. He was a kid when he played with Cher too. That was, if I'm thinking right. There was another guy that played with him too that was pretty good. Played with Cher that was pretty good too. Gary's saying, worshiping God and not the song. And you spelled worshiping with 2 P's. That's how I spell it too, but it's also correct with 1 P, believe it or not. It is difficult to write worship songs that don't talk about me. Well, especially. I've written a few worship songs, and this is clearly off the subject. But one thing I've really tried to do with worship songs, actually, when we're talking about writing songs in general, the most formulaic songs are worship songs, church songs. They're the most formulaic because they have to follow certain formulas. First off, they have to be true to Scripture. And generally, they have to be universal. Like if I wrote in a worship song, God, Father in heaven, you're so much better than my Father on earth. Now, that's true no matter what. However, some people had really great dads. My dad was great. I love my dad. And some people had horrible dads. And this writer sounds like he had a horrible dad. And he's counting on his dad in heaven. And it's like, okay, I get that, but that's not a universal truth. You got to say stuff that everybody can sing. So a lot of worship writers will write a little too specific about their own experience, and it's what turns into is a message song. Message songs aren't worship songs. The other thing is that the range should be very narrow on a worship song because you want to get as many people singing as possible. So I'm going to take a sip because I'm taking a sip so that you guys can take a sip too. And I'm really not talking enough about soloing, but iced tea, coffee. A Japanese guitar player. Oh, sorry. I'll have to look that up. I see. Oh, you probably can't put a link in there. Yeah, I don't get paid per note, Jeff. Let's see. Yes, yeah. Dream On is very classical. He may have played it. Let's see. No, that's even harder. So I get in arguments with jazz geeks. I wouldn't call myself a serious jazz geek, but I believe personally that John Coltrane's famous Giant Steps, which is the hardest thing I've ever tried to solo. We're talking about soloing. And in fact, I can tell you a little. I don't necessarily need the chords in front of me, but I can tell you a little secret how to kind of get started on a song like that. That's so hard. Okay, so stay tuned for that secret. All right. I just saw a jazz guitar player talk about this the other day, and John Brennan, who got a PhD at USC, he's the one that taught me this whole trick. He's a professor here in LA, guitar professor. But I think that John Coltrane wrote that the first chorus through Giant Steps was composed, that he wrote it and memorized it or was reading it. I don't know. I don't know if John Coltrane could read music. I know George Benson and Wes Montgomery couldn't. But if you're a horn player and probably back in that day you start playing in big bands, you probably had to read. So I'm assuming he knew how to read. So maybe he knew how to write it out. I've never seen him in front of a chart, but Giant Steps, that solo is so perfect for the first chorus, even like the first chorus and a half, and then he kind of goes what I would say a little off the reservation, and then the rest of the time he's doing flurries with gaps, held notes. He's like, I transcribed the first chorus. I tried to transcribe more, like the first two choruses of Giant Steps, meaning I wrote it out note for note. Not in tab, I just wrote it out in music notation. And what I noticed was that it was freaking perfect. There was not a bad note. And then what I noticed later in the solo, and he does several, if you listen to Giant Steps, he does several choruses. It goes by pretty quick, you know. Shoot, my brain's shutting off. Shoot, that's it. No, that's it. Anyway, I know. I actually have a video on how to play that. I think I did a video on how to play it. I may have just played it and put the PDF of my voicings because I came up with those voicings for that. But he also later in the solo, you know, chorus 3-4, he's quoting the first chorus. Okay, so the secret, the little trick. Here's a trick, and again, this requires theory knowledge, quite a bit of it. But my friend John Brennan showed me this trick, and basically said, just map out 1, 2, 3, 5 of each chord. Okay, so in other words, the first chord's B major. B major 7. So the 1, 2, 3, 5 would be B, C sharp, D sharp, and F sharp. Okay, and that's a shape you get used to because every major chord is going to have that shape on those 2 strings. You could also play it like this if you wanted to. If you got yourself in a situation where you had to reach down and grab it or whatever. That's one of the things that John Brennan, this friend of mine, I haven't seen in years, he rented in our building. That's how I knew him. He rented an apartment in the building that we managed. That was one of the things he would work on, the facility to be able to play anything. His hands could go to anything at any moment if his head heard it. And that was the thing that he really worked on. He was really, really good at that. I mean, just an amazing player. I don't know if there's any videos of him playing anymore, but so then the next chord is D, and so you do the same thing on D. It's D major, so it's B major to D major. It's a bunch. I'm sorry, D7, and then G major to F sharp or to B flat 7. So what it is kind of like we're in the key of B for 2 beats. Quick 2 beats, and the next chord. Believe it or not, that was 2 beats. So 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 is how fast the thing is going, and even faster. And so that's just we're in B, the key of B for 2 beats. Then we're doing a 5, 1 in the key of G for 2 beats, and then we're doing a 5, 1. Let's see. We're doing a 5-1 in E flat. So we're in B. Those are the only 3 keys in the whole song: B, G, and E flat. And if it were to go, a bar of B and a bar of D or G, and then a bar of E flat. And keep in mind these keys are a major third descending. So we're in B. It goes to the key of G, which is a major third below B, and a major third below G is E flat, and then a major third below E flat is B. So it does do the same 3 keys in the same order throughout the whole song, but it doesn't do it for like a bar each. It does it like 2 beats, like this, like two beats, and then 4 beats. Oops, I'm sorry, 4 beats, and then oh shoot, no, what is it? Shoot, what am I doing here? So when we go to the B flat, we're on that for 2 beats, and then we're on the E flat for 4 beats. So now we went 2 beats of B, 4 beats of G, and 6 beats of the other key, the E flat. And then it's going to do A minor to D7, which is the 2-5 in the key of G, and then it's going to start that same progression that we just did, but now starting on the G major. So it's a very, very complex song to play over, and I'm losing people talking about this. But what John said is just play the 1, 2, 3, 4 of every one of those. And then he said when you get to the E, so each one of those would be 8th notes, 1 and 2 and. So there's 2 beats right there. And then this is, like I said, this is probably one of the most complex songs to play over. But E flat had 4 beats of E flat. So he said just go up and down. Okay, and then you would go to now where you've finally got a minor one, and so that'd be one way to play it is A, B, C, E flat, or I'm sorry, A, B, C, E. Oh yeah, I know Rich Mullins. I know. I remember he died. I sat next to him on a plane once, like a long time ago. We just kind of realized that he didn't know who I was. And then the next one was back to D. And so all I'm doing is 1, 2, 3, 5, 1, 2, 3, 5 on every one of those chords. And then John said, well, then mix it up. So take those same, and so instead of doing 1, 2, 3, 5, maybe go 1, 3, 2, 5, or 1, 2, 5, 3. And so then you start to get these more organic movements, more melodic movements. Check it out. So if I go on the B chord, I'm playing B, C, F sharp, D sharp. It goes really nice down to the D, which is the next chord. So and you can kind of work your way through the chord progression by doing it. I used to practice that, and then I would change it up. Instead of going, I would go backwards, right? Brain's shutting off. Now I need to go backwards. Okay, and so that's like soloing, like that's intellectual soloing. And my speculation, again, that gets me in trouble with jazz snobs, is that Coltrane actually wrote out his solo, at least the first chorus, and then he just goes, I'll wing it from there. So I could be wrong. There's no way to prove me right or wrong. But I've never heard anyone really take that stance. I should do a video on it and watch the hate roll in. So again, it's a foundational thing. When we're talking about soloing, you can break all solos up into two camps: improvised, or I should touch my face so we can. I'll take a sip together. It's our drinking game. Gary's in the house. Jeff, well, there's definitely some truth in that. Yeah, it's nah, not that fast. So let's see. If starting to learn solo, what one is inclined to learn with the chord tones. What other notes are given the major scale, blah, 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 transition between and around chord tones? It's great, and we'll be talking. I think if we continue on this subject, we'll be talking about that. And we've even touched on it before when I was doing slide. I'm like, yeah, the temptation is, like I said before, is to you're on an A chord, you're going, and he goes to D chord, you just take that lick up here and go. But you can do a cool D lick down here. You don't need to move your hand up. So, and if you do a lick over the D chord down here, it's probably more likely to be more musical. See, this is just la 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 la. You're just going back and forth between the same thing. But if you were to do something like and then you go to the D chord, you're basically taking your idea and making it work over A, and then taking your idea and making it work over D, or make it more a little D-centric. Okay, and I would call that would be a very Beethoven approach. That would be a theme and variations approach, where you start a theme and then you build on it, and that is generally, I think, the best solos. The best solos, especially I see in jazz, the guys that just kind of shred and just kind of play through the changes and keep blah blah blah, and they keep going and going and going, and that's great. But the guys what happens when Gary, we may need to create a new rule. What happens if you're playing that in a jazz club is all of a sudden people are like going from this to. I always do that at church whenever we get too like jazzy during communion. If somebody starts getting really kind of like a little too jazzy during communion, I'm like, I get out the bourbon and the cigarette, because that's what it feels like. And so, but if you do a song, if you're soloing and you create a melodic idea and you develop it again, and you keep taking it places while the chords are changing and you're making it work through all these changes. That's an art form. Anyone can learn a bunch of scales and play, do the exercises and get their timing down so they can change to the right scale at the right moment. Okay, so that's part of it. So, John, I would say, and this would play in that camp. I would say the first thing you do, and this is true in jazz, and this would be true in worship, this would be true in rock. If the chord progression is the same as the chord progression of the song, if it's a new chord progression, you can't do this. Sometimes it happens. The guitar solo or the solo section is a whole different chord change, and it's happened. We can think of songs like that. But generally, it's over the chorus, or less likely over the verse changes or the bridge changes, but most likely the chorus changes. So the first thing you want to do is learn the melody. 100%. Learn the melody of the song on the guitar. And John, maybe this will be an instance where you want to learn it on multiple places on the neck. So no matter where you are on the neck, you can always revert to the solo, to the melody. Because that's going to be the thing that's going to be most likely to propel the song forward through the solo. I think song form, part of the reason why there are not solos in pop songs as much anymore, it's starting to come back, believe it or not. I may actually get asked to do one. I did one. I wish. I did one on a Justin Bieber Taylor Swift song that would have been a #1 smash if it ever had gotten released. And I did a blazing solo on it. I wish I had a copy of it. I need to. Yeah, it's just they won't. It's very, very protected, and it will never come out. It will never come out. But if you remind me, I'll tell the story of that. Yeah, the 1-2-3-5 trick is really handy for navigating through tough changes. And what you can do it with blues, like an A. You know, you can do it all over all three of the chords in the blues, A, D, D7. But also if it's blues that goes into like, does something like that. But again, playing 1-2-3-5 would be the same as just playing a scale. What you want to try to do is try to mix that up. But that's why, again, John Brennan, I keep saying his name. It would be funny if he ever saw this video. But he was really good at that. Like, how many different variations can you do of this? And, you know, we could count them out, you know, 1, 2, 3, 5. How many variations using those 4 notes in every sequence, every 4-note sequence can we do? That's where we get into the combinatorics, right? Oh, which guitars did I want to be starting out? Starting out early. I wanted to be John Lennon or Paul McCartney. And my best friend and I would pretend like we were the Beatles, and I got to be John and Paul, and he had to be George and Ringo. He was younger than me, so he's a surgeon now. So, but yeah, you know, when I got into my teens, I talked about this, my heroes, but when I got into my teens, I started getting into session work. But I really loved George Benson, Wes Montgomery, really got into Django Reinhardt and Charlie Christian. I then got into Lee Ritenour and Lukather and Larry Carlton, you know, and that's kind of why I moved to LA, was to be one of those guys. So to actually pack up everything I own and move 2,000 miles to a place where I knew no one, that was inspired by people like Lukather, Ritenour, Lukather you might have heard of, but Ritenour and Carlton and Jay Graydon and Tommy Tedesco are people that are guitar players that nobody's really heard of. They've heard them all their lives, but they've not heard of them. So that's kind of what I wanted to do. And then Gary's posting the Tom command sets. Let's see. John says, that's my big problem. I don't know how to be melodic with the scales I've learned rather than just sounding like I'm playing generic scales. Exactly. Okay, John, that's why you try to start in... Now, if you're just jamming over my bluegrass jam, right? There is no melody. It's just a jam. And if you're jamming with buddies, there's no melody, so you really can't do that. But even then, even with your generic... scales, let's say we take a major, you know, pentatonic, right? That's your, you know, you talk about, oh, I just sound like I'm, okay. No, what you do is don't be afraid to hit the same note twice, 3 times, 4 times in a row, okay? So in other words, and immediately your scales stop sounding like scales. Okay? The other thing is, don't be afraid to do short phrases. Okay? And then the other thing is, with those short scales, create little, I just accidentally did it right there. I created a little theme and I did a variation. Here's my theme. I mean, theme can be 2 notes, as little as 2 notes, 3 notes, but, there's my theme and variation, and then there's a variation, you know. you don't just play up and down the scales. You learn them, you practice them, you shed them. But when you're soloing, when you're with other musicians, then you just stop. And it's one thing. I don't care if you do that. Yeah, Jeff, I talk about those kind of moments all the time, don't I? But yeah, once you get the scale down, then it's a matter of trying to make it musical. And that's what, if there is a melody, and the melody is, right? Come Thou Fount is what the melody is there. So that's the melody. So it comes to the solo, you go. And that's creating a little bit more of a solo where people will put down their drink and their cigarette at church in Australia. Church in Australia, that would not be unusual. Anybody from Australia here can give me an amen. So again, keep it simple, and it'll be much more likely to be less solo-y sounding. Less scale sounding, because you don't want your solo just to be scales. You want it to be a melody. You want to propel the song forward. You want to make sense that there's a solo here between this chorus and this chorus. It's not just so that the lead singer can go get a drink. Now, I remember Duke Tomato and the All-Star Frogs. The guitar player would actually play with his guitar like this, and he would literally play like that, his electric guitar, so he could deliver drinks to all his bandmates. They had a bartender on stage. Duke Tomato. I don't know if any of you have ever seen Duke Tomato. They were a Chicago band, but they played in Indianapolis all the time, and they were hilarious. They had they were like an R&B band. They did soul music and kind of like the Blues Brothers kind of music. And probably about the same time as the Blues Brothers. And they had literally a full-time bartender on stage that was serving drinks just to the band. Now, my speculation is it was all just colored water. Because they would literally go through gallons and gallons of whiskey and vodka and beers and stuff. So it was pretty funny. Yes, Jeff's asking a lot of good questions, and we talked about this. Ultimately, boy, big picture stuff here. Okay. Ultimately, one of the things I suggest you do, and I've said this many times too, is to sing along. Okay, and what happens if you sing along with your playing, no matter how bad you can sing, you can do this by yourself with no one else in the room, or in the house, or in the neighborhood. If that makes you feel better. But what it does is it connects your head to your hands. Okay, and at first you're going to go dun, 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 right. At first you're going to be echoing or ghosting what you're playing, because you're not going to be able to go dun, dun, dun. All right. So that's at first. You're going to go, whether you realize it or not, you're going to be a little behind what you're playing, okay? But eventually you'll get to the point where, which is a way of your brain and your hands telling you that, wait a minute, we're connected, okay? Then you're going to get to a point where you go, okay? So yes, the answer to that is oftentimes I will hear an idea when I'm playing along, like if I'm in a session and they want me to put a guitar solo down, I'll hear an idea and I'll start to execute it. I won't generally just jump in and start playing stuff. I will try to come up with something that's melodic, maybe start on one note and build from that, Yes, it's totally fine to land on a non-chord tone, because what does that do? That creates tension. And what does tension want? Release. That's all music. If I'm in a key of E, that tension wants to go here. Right? So if you are playing, in E, you're if you're playing a C sharp over an E chord, you're creating an amen cadence, a 4-1 cadence essentially. It wants to go down to that beat or up to the E, if you want, right? So yeah, you can always, yeah, I would. Here's the thing. I would learn chord tones like we're playing an A blues, okay, A7, A, C sharp, D. I'm sorry, E sharp, A, C sharp, E, and G. But that does not a solo make. Those are great notes to know, but we also tend to play minor pentatonic. So now if you combine those two, now you have something. So what I did was I combined the minor pentatonic with the chord tone. And basically they're all the same note except I have one extra note. I have that C sharp. But it makes it much more interesting than, or, so yeah, so creating hybrid scales from either two scales or a scale and a chord or something like that is always a cool thing to do, but it's more something you almost want to discover accidentally rather than intentionally create a scale. Okay, and now I'm going to use this hybrid scale, so it's kind of this weird place between heart and head, right? Soloing is some guys are all heart and some guys are all head, and you can tell. And the guys that are all heart are more likely to sell records. Okay, the blues players, those guys, they're all heart. I mean, they can make people cry with one note. The guys that are out there shredding, and doing all these crazy things, and I don't know. I have some crazy songs that are. I've got some crazy things that I've written that really, is only going to inspire people to hit the next button on Spotify. That's pretty much what it's going to inspire. So yeah, so trying to get away from, let me reiterate, what was it? Yeah, exactly. I mean, how many, Jeff, that's a huge point. How many guitar solos can you sing along with, right? The great guitar solos, I mean, I would say Stairway to Heaven would not be one of those, even though that's a great guitar solo. There's a lot of, Jimmy Page solos are great solos. There's an example of a song we were talking about earlier. Is he soloing over the chorus or is it a new section? He's actually soloing over a new section, but I don't think there is no chorus in Stairway to Heaven. It just keeps changing and changing and changing. Maybe there's no chorus. There's no repeated lyric in Stairway to Heaven. So such a interesting song, But that's It's such a great groove to play over, and Jimmy does a great job over that. But there are so many great guitar solos that people can either air guitar to because they've just heard it and they know it, maybe because it was such a big hit, it's been on the radio 1,000 times, like Beat It, or it's just such a melodic solo. It's hard not to sing along with, and so those are the best solos in my opinion. The solos that exactly what you just said gets the audience humming along with it or singing it or whatever. Where the song would be a lesser song if it didn't exist. Okay? Now, then there's styles of music where so in jazz, if you're playing in a jazz group, bebop, we do what's called real book gigs. Real book, I did a video on the real book. I can post that. Real book gigs are where you get the real book out, and the real book is a book of 500 to 1,000 songs, yeah, here it is. Yeah, this was in my Business of Making Music playlist, and it's got all these classic jazz, classic bebop, swing tunes, things like that. And basically the format for a real book gig is somebody plays the head, which is the melody. Okay, so you play the tune down. And back in the day, songs were very commonly AABA form. So you'd have the head twice, B section, and the head again. Okay. Once you do that, somebody say you got a sax player. The sax player plays that. Now he takes that and he goes and he plays solo over the AABA. So one time through or two times through or whatever. It may be predetermined. If it's a fast song, you may do 3 or 4 choruses. If it's a ballad, you'll only do 1. Okay, and then he hands it off to the piano player, and the piano player does a chorus, or a time through. And then he hands it off to the bass player, and the audience goes to the bathroom at this point for the bass player solo and for the drum solo. There's the old joke. The guy is going to Africa on safari, and they're in the jungles, and they hear drums in the distance, and he says, "Do we need to worry about those drums in the distance?" And he said, "As long as they don't stop, we're fine." And the drums continue, and they're walking, and it's getting darker, and it's the jungle's getting thicker, and drums are getting louder, and so are you sure we don't have to worry about the drums? And the guide says, "No, as long as they don't stop, we're fine." And then they get a little darker. It gets a little darker in the forest, and it's thicker and denser, and they're cutting through, and suddenly the drums stop, and the guide says, "Uh-oh." And the guy says, "What?" He goes, "Bass solo." It's really, really bad joke. Okay, so anyway, but everybody gets a solo. So, and then what happens is you play the head again. So in that scenario, it's very also similar to a bluegrass scenario, where in bluegrass you got a mandolin player, a banjo player, 2 guitar players, and an upright bass player. And they play the melody, and it's usually a violin melody. Or the violin may be playing the melody, but also it was originally maybe written for a violin. What's that called? And then, Kick, I'll get to yours in a second here. And so, in bluegrass, the same thing may happen. You have somebody play the head, and then the banjo player takes a solo, and the mandolin player takes a solo, blah, blah. So that's the expectation. And in that scenario, if you already, learn the melody, even if you're not the person playing the melody, but that way what you can do is you can use the melody will often help you stay in along with the chord progression. So if there's a melody that is then you learn the melody, and I'm just made up that melody. But then it will keep you on the narrow path of the chords and the key, so you won't necessarily have to know even what chords you're playing over as much as you got the melody. You do variations on that, and so much of bluegrass is variations on the original theme, and so that's a way to go. Now, Kick asked if greetings from London, UK. I don't think you meant that to be a question. Do you always use standard tuning? No, I use all sorts of different tunings, but primarily, when I'm doing session work, unless I'm playing slide, like if I play lap steel, or if I'm going to play like slide, I might go to open tunings. But for session work, no, I'll probably leave it in standard tuning just because I don't want to have to think too much. But keep in mind, I also play a lot of different instruments that are in different tunings. So like I play mandolin. And once I have a mandolin in my hand and play it for about 10 seconds, I'm like, okay, I know where everything is. I can read on that. So if you want a G chord or a C chord or D chord or A flat chord or whatever, I can play it without having to retune it. And so mandolins tune very differently than guitar. So is banjo. That Irish Kazuki there, I did a session on that recently. That's almost tuned like a mandolin, but not quite. And so... I had to think really hard on that one. That one was a little tough, to be honest. The baritone up there is interesting because that it looks like a Telecaster, the copper Telecaster. It's actually a baritone, and I bought that to do like heavy rock stuff for TV shows and stuff. And that one is actually it's hard for me to read on baritone because it's just like a guitar, and it's everything's down a fourth. But yeah, so generally though, standard tuning is my go-to. As far as soloing, like yeah, I wouldn't change tuning to do a guitar solo. I just wouldn't. I know where everything is on the guitar, especially we were talking about earlier doing the 1, 2, 3, 5. You know, I would have a hard time doing that in any other thing than standard tuning. There's probably guitar players that can go from tuning to tuning and do whatever, but that would be a rare talent. So, but if you like playing in open tunings, that's fine. And if you have one open tuning that you always play in, say you play an open C or something, because I'm hearing that like open C for some reason people are saying like that's the new tuning because it gives the guitar such a great range. And that's all you ever played in, then you would be able to solo over in that. You'd be able to play bebop chords. You'd be able to do whatever you want if that's the only tuning you ever played in. But if you were constantly changing tuning on every song, I don't know that your brain would be able to keep up. Mine wouldn't. So, how about Greek bouzouki? Greek guys like, yeah, I need to get a Greek bouzouki. John, do you have a good place I can get a good cheap? I just need a cheap Greek bouzouki, maybe with a pickup in it. I almost bought one at the NAMM show for like $300, but I just didn't want to carry it around with me. Because they were actually from Greece and they brought the bouzouki's and they had cheap ones. They had really nice ones, but I don't need a fancy one because I'm just using it here by myself in my studio. The less ornamentation, the better, as far as I'm concerned. I don't want to pay for ornamentation. A light wood color. I don't know that matters. You mean the fretboard? Vito, I'm not sure I understand the question. It'd be better to get a light wood color. I think it just makes me fumble way less while playing scales. Yeah, if you practice in the dark, it's true. Exactly. Who moved my cheese? Yeah, and ultimately a solo should be something that people want to listen to. That's why it's, nice to bring in the melody, or do a theme and come up with a new melody and do a theme and variations on that. All right. There are times where you're going to have a one chord thing. I think this is one chord. I think this is just A minor here. Who was it that was asking if I could sit on the non-chord tones? Was that you, Jeff? Yeah, so like here would be this is an A minor chord pad. Okay, so it's just A, C, E, A, C. But like if I sit on a D, it's a great tone. Sit on that seventh. Oh, that was you, John. Now so if I go through the scale tones, 1, 5, 6, 7, 8. The only one that I feel like doesn't work very well is the 6. It really does want to resolve. But you can go to it if you go back away from it. So, right? And then the 9th I love, or the 2nd. Second is always the one you want to go to if you want to just get people thinking about life. So, Vito, remember you were saying you were having a hard time being melodic with pentatonics. Yeah, it's true. It's a little harder to be melodic with pentatonics than with diatonics. So, if you add the... Yeah, exactly, Jeff. So like a theme might be, I could do a theme where I'm doing 1, 2, 3, 5, right? Variation might be this. Or it might be coming reversing. You could go to a blues note. I love that note. Yeah, and Jeff, what is that? If he sits on the second and he's toying with the audience, what is that? Right? That's manipulation. That's tension. That's tension release. That's exactly what music is. You know, I mean, there are one chord songs. I think Dylan has a few of them. I'm going to take a sip. In fact, I can change to electric, so I can do some electric over that vibe. And so when you have, you know, soloing is such a huge thing because that A minor pad that I was playing over is like the opposite of giant steps, you know, and in some, they both are difficult. You know, you go, oh, it's easy to play over an A minor pad. Yeah, but is it easy to say something over it? And they're both difficult to say something over because with giant steps and the chords are going by so fast, let's see. You know, what am I doing? Oh. Everybody take a sip. I didn't know I was in open tuning. Not a fan of this tone. I think I've designed this tone for a little dark. All right, so I didn't know what I was in. I'm still in. But with a song as complex as Giant Steps, you know, you can solo over it, but can you say something? That's the hard part, man. You know, if you can. One of my favorite versions of Giant Steps is Kenny Garrett. Kenny Garrett. I never met Kenny Garrett, but a good friend of mine is friends of his. My good friend has got Alzheimer's bad. He's at the end of his life. It's a bummer. But if I pull up, if I go to YouTube and hit, I think it was at one of the jazz festivals. It is freaking insane. Let's see. Kenny Garrett, Giant Steps. And so, somebody transcribed it. Holy crud. Live and key up. I think this was it. Yeah, I think this is it. No, that's not it. Dang it, where was it? Oh, shoot, I just closed the window. But anyway, he not only shreds the crap out of Giant Steps, he also says something with it. You know, he puts his own melody over it, and it's just really cool. And that's one of the things, actually, you could probably come up with a really cool melody over Giant Steps. A Giant Steps melody is, what is it? I yawn in Giant Steps. When I yawn, I'm like, oh, I do a descending major 7 chord. So, been a while. This neck is hard to play. But playing over that is in some, I don't want to say harder. It's not harder. There's nothing harder than playing over giant steps for me. But it is. Let's see where giant steps. I think this may be it. Oh, that's a trio. There was a piano player. Dang it. 400 beats per minute. Yeah, he does it insanely fast. It's like, oh, I may get copyrighted. Oh, you're right. You got to be careful. Well, if I do, that's all right. I can't monetize one video, or I may have to take it out or mute it. I don't want to muting it, but so the but trying to say something musical over giant steps and not just play, is one thing. But playing over something that's just like a vamp, or not even a vamp, a one chord, Gotta turn up the guitar. It just seems so compressed. Oh wow, that is already up. See if I can get some more volume out of this. Turn this on. Okay, now you can take some liberties if it's just an A minor chord. In this case, it is. We don't know if it's a Dorian or a Aeolian. So I could treat it as a scale. Or I could also treat it as harmonic minor. Or just regular minor. Or Phrygian. Or I could go back and forth between any of those. Because what I'm playing over is so simple, it's just an A. If it was just A and E, I could even go major and minor, it wouldn't matter. But I've actually got a minor tonality there, so I do know it's a minor thing of some kind. Hey, Leo. Exactly. That's exactly what giant steps is like, yeah. Not just doing blues licks now. So I need a groove. Yeah, I'm a huge George Benson fan, you know that. Wes Montgomery. There's that fourth. There's that. Here, I'll do the Joe Satriani the second. But I'm eventually going back to the root because I want to resolve that tension. Chromatics are nice too. But also the tone is inspiring me to play. Like, this is actually kind of Sudog just already changed it, but it's kind of my Pat Metheny tone. So what would Pat Metheny do over this? He would do pentatonics a lot with like slides, like. I realized that he did that when I finally saw him live. I was like, oh, he's doing a lot of pentatonics, but he's just using them in interesting ways. Taking that A minor pentatonic. And again, it just sounds like scales that you gotta be careful, but go up 2 frets and you get kind of that what is it? Sorry, my brain shut off. The Dorian sound. The same shape. You get this Dorian sound. As long as you eventually get back to kind of the rooting around the A minor chord. You can play any pentatonic. But if I even go up another fret, it's totally out of the key, but at the same time it sounds kind of bluesy. If I play at the 10th fret, the same exact scale, or pentatonic number 1, which said this would probably be kind of like a weird, because I've got a C, I've got an E flat. I'm actually conflicting with notes. I don't even have an A in this. I have a B flat. But if I play up here, D minor pentatonic, I'm playing pentatonic in the 10th fret. Has a very minor A minor sound because it has the F in it, but there's no E. But if at any moment I resolve to that E, it'll sound great. See that? So I'm creating tension by using a scale, not even a tone. I'm using a whole set of tones to create tension. And then I finally resolved the one note in the scale that was creating all the tension, which was the F. Same thing if I take it up 2 more frets, go to the 12th fret. Now I'm playing the exact same pentatonic number 1, but I'm playing the 12th fret, and it also has a kind of a minor sound because it has that 9th in there, and that's the note that creates the tension that you want to resolve. So check it out. So that's how Pat Metheny would kind of approach it. If I go up another fret to F minor, technically none of those notes should work, but they do. I could do A major pentatonic over, but that definitely doesn't work. But in some ways it does. It creates nothing more tense than playing a C sharp over an A minor chord. If I go up to G minor, now I definitely am playing A Phrygian, because I have a B flat in here, and an F, a D. All I'm doing is just sliding the same pentatonic shape around to different positions. I may have referenced this before, but I remember seeing I had a friend who had a piano player friend of mine that had a book by Herbie Hancock that talked about all 12 pentatonics over any different chord, and it was this, it was kind of this almost more of like a treatise, like a doctrinal study on pentatonic scales, and it was other pentatonic scales besides just the minor pentatonic. But he said, over like an A minor chord, A minor pentatonic is the most inside. Then the next most inside would be the E minor pentatonic over that. Then the next most inside would be the probably the D minor, and then the next step away might be the B minor pentatonic, and then maybe the G minor, and then you might go up to the C minor, and eventually you be like have ones that like B flat minor is the furthest away from it. Like every note is wrong, but you can still justify it. Like if I'll play that pad. Sorry, here we go. Okay. And here's the correct scale. Okay. If I play it down a fret, every note should be wrong. And if I were only sitting there, it'd probably be true. But a lot of guys will go back and forth. And go up a fret, same thing. As long as you get back to the original scale, it kind of all just creates this tension. But if you can sell it, it sounds like you're doing a lot more complex things than you're actually doing. And oftentimes in many things in life, things sound or look a lot more complex than they really are. And that's kind of the beauty of music, is really the beauty of guitar, because guitars, you can learn one shape and then create all sorts of trouble. A lot of times when you watch jazz musicians too, you can really see them kind of working things out in front of the audience. I mean, we're all guilty of practicing at a gig, and that's kind of what I feel like a lot of jazz players just perpetually do. They're perpetually practicing. And so, how many times have you seen a jazz guy go like he tries to, and he starts, he's like, oh, that didn't work, but how can I make it work, kind of thing. And you can see them working that out on stage. And to me, that's kind of cool, because you're actually watching them do their job. I mean, how many cop detective shows do we watch where we're just watching them kind of figure it out? And that's kind of what a lot of times when you go to a jazz gig, the great players are up there just kind of trying to take things to the next level. The last thing they want to do is play something they've already done before, and that's the beauty of jazz. So, can you cover which notes you can bend in this? Ooh, let's see. That's a big question. Mixolydian is a mode that features different arrangement of it. Yeah, Mixolydian is a major scale with a flatted seventh. It would be the quickest way to find. It's the fifth. It's the fifth mode of a major key, but It is a major mode. It is mixolydian is a major mode. So C major is. If I take the seventh note, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the B, if I flat it to B flat, that becomes mixolydian. It works great over a C7 chord or a C9 chord. But you can go outside of that. You got a pentatonic section. If you go up a half step on the pentatonic, you got a flat 5, a flat 9, a sharp 9, a 4, and a flat sharp 5. Which, of course, you know, if you're playing over some kind of altered chord, it would work. If you're mixolydian, so mixolydian is one of the 7 modes. We covered modes. Was that the first lessons we did? We did the modes. Is that right? So if you go back to lesson number 1, you can start with the major scale. We talked about modes. Bending, you could bend to any note, but if you're going to bend, bending is one of those things where I really feel like you need to have a plan. You need to know what note you're going to bend to. You can't just go. You can't just do this. A lot of first-time players will go, and they're not bending to anything. They don't know what they're bending to. So if you're gonna bend, you got to know that. Okay, I want to go to this note. If I'm going to bend here, if I'm going to bend this. Yeah, but I mean, you can also bend. You can bend half of a half step. You know, that's not particularly safe, but it sounds amazing. You know, go up a whole half step, if that makes sense, or up a whole step. Or you can go between the whole step and the half step. I mean, blues players will do that. And generally, I won't bend on the bottom 3 strings so much. You know, I might. But there's a case where I'm going to the B, and over the A minor, I want to bend the, you know, the B to the C. I don't want to go to C sharp. I don't want to go there. I want to go here. So you got to know if you're gonna actually go to the trouble to bend. What am I doing? There we go. You're gonna go to the trouble to bend. You're gonna want to know what the heck your ultimate goal is on bending. Now I got far more advanced on soloing than I really wanted to, and it's already been an hour and a half. I could literally talk for days on this. You see, I like bending with the first finger on the 5th fret of the G string pentatonic. Yeah, you bend that if you're playing over A. Same as going, right? Get more of a rock tone here. I mean, Stevie Ray Vaughan. That's what Stevie Ray Vaughan's doing right there. He's over an E chord. He's playing over the E7. He's kind of doing that that G over the E chord, and he's bending it kind of to G sharp, but not quite. It's the same thing as that. That's what Whitsett was talking about, I think. Was that Whitsett? No. Wait. Somebody said, I like bending. Where did that go? Oh, yeah, it was coffee. Iced coffee tones. Yeah, you like bending that first finger. Yeah, the fist. Yeah, that thing that I was just doing. You see? D. And you can actually. I'm actually hitting two notes. And I'm actually somehow. I'm actually only bending one of the two strings, which is weird. I don't know how I got that down, but I don't think I ever tried it. It's just like, oh, but I don't want to bend this. It's like doing it this way, where I'm keeping that pinky on the E note. It's like doing a pedal steel. Like, but yeah, you're trying to keep one finger from bending, the other one to bend. You want one finger to bend and one finger not to bend. All right, so all right. Let's see. I'm going to stop on the net at this point. I don't know. We may continue on this on Monday, because we could go. Like I said, I could talk for days on this, because it's kind of probably half of the lessons we've been talking about have something to do with soloing, right? And in spite of the fact that I'm totally bookending this conversation with the fact that, look, everybody spends 95% of their time practicing soloing, but only 5% of their time in the real world actually soloing. So, and it may even be less than that. In fact, when I'm writing music for TV, it's a waste of my time to put a guitar solo on top of the beds that I'm creating, because they're just going to mute. They're not going to use those versions. When I write music for library music for reality shows, they just want some kind of bed they can put under. But if there's guitar solo on top, they can't. You can't hear the dialogue. So you send them a bunch of different mixes. Full mix. Maybe full mix with guitar solo. No drums, or sometimes just drums and bass only. A lot of times what they'll do is the editors will drop in a couple different versions of your song, like the full mix, and they'll go to that for like 6 or 7 seconds, and then they'll drop down to bass and drums only, and they just drop them in together, and they just crossfade the two together. And so they go from full band to just kick and snare, just drums and bass. So you do too much work on that. So even when I'm working in my studio and I could sit here and do solos all day, I don't, because it's just a waste of my time. In the real world, soloing is not as common as playing good solid rhythm. And if you're a good solid rhythm player, you're going to probably keep busy, because there's a lot of places that there's a lot of guitar players that can solo, and they're great players and they got a lot of personality in it, but their rhythm playing is crap. So here I am doing lessons on soloing and telling you, don't worry about soloing. Work on your rhythm playing. We'll do that next. We'll do solo and everything. Yeah. Oh, lesson 1 was a cage. You're right. Lesson 44 covered blues soloing. Mode started at lesson 15. No, I think mode started at lesson 13. I think cage was 1 through 12, if I'm not mistaken, Bruce. But you may know. I should put together like a spreadsheet of that. Don't you guys do it? I can actually see them all. Well, actually, if you go to my live stream, I think there's a live stream tab. You might be able to see them all in order, so you could easily scroll through them. See, Jim's gone. Let's see. What else? Okay, so the Tom Howard story. So this would have been right after Beth and I got married. Well, right after, within a couple of years, like early 90s. And I was kind of struggling to get started doing anything session related. And there was this guy, Tom Howard, who was a pretty well-known Christian producer, artist, arranger. He was kind of an arranger a lot. He worked with a lot of people like Phil Keaggy, and I'm trying to think of some of the bigger artists. Christian artists that he worked with. Anyway, it's not critical. But in fact, I think we had a memorial for Tom in Pasadena. He died in Nashville, but I think we had a memorial for. No, that was Mark Hurd's memorial. That I met Phil Keaggy. Phil Keaggy was at Mark Hurd and played it. But both Phil Keaggy and I played at Mark Hurd's memorial. And I was a Phil Keaggy fan somewhat. I never really got into him. I mean, as you know, I liked some of his stuff, but I don't know. I was either probably at the time I was a jazz head, so he wasn't like floating my boat at the time. But he's the Christian guitar player there. But goes, oh yeah, you ever heard of Phil Keaggy? Anyway, so Tom started to use me on some stuff. I remember maybe even the first session I did with him. He asked me, and I think I told this story. He asked me if I played mandolin, and I lied and said yes. When's the session? And he said day after tomorrow, and I was like, oh crap, I don't even have a mandolin. But somebody once said, don't ever say no, and I'm like that's kind of a. I said no last week, didn't I, to that banjo session because it was too hard. I said, no, I even told them, I said, send me the music, let me see if I can do it. And they sent it to me, and I said, you know what, I can do 90% of this, but there's 10% of this I can't do. And I even told them, I said, their samples sounded great. I don't think, and it was a cartoon. The only thing was that all the banjo parts, there was no music going, I was just solo banjo. So it becomes pretty obvious that it's not real banjo when it's that kind of scenario. So anyway, sidebar. So I go to my friend John Purvis's house, and he has a mandolin, and I asked him, can I buy it? So I bought this mandolin from him for $50. I think Alex still has it. It's a Lotus mandolin. And I took it, and I didn't know anything about mandolin. There was no internet, and so I just was kind of like, I may have gotten a book, but I think what I did was I just went, okay, the tuning of a mandolin is like a violin. I made sure it was tuned like that, and then I started writing out all the chords I could figure out. And I'm like, okay, here's a G chord, here's a C chord, here's a D chord. I didn't realize, somebody was asking me, an aha moment. I didn't realize at that moment that mandolin was the same as the bottom four strings of a guitar upside down. So if you think about a G chord like this, you just reverse it, and now you got a G chord on mandolin. So that was kind of cool. So I did that session for it. So what ended up happening on that session is all he wanted me to do was like, probably sound better on acoustic. I'm not going to get my mandolin, but it was for some infomercial for what's a World Vision? It was a World Vision ad, and he did a lot of that stuff. So anyway, that was. But what prompted me to think about this story was another session. So I would go over to his studio, and he was very, very unorganized, and he would hire me to come and organize his studio and pay me $10 an hour. And I added to that caveat, and all the change I can find, because I would actually make more than $10 an hour just finding like change everywhere. So I would do that. I would come over, and that may have been a bad thing that I did, because then he was thinking of me as the guy that cleans up and organizes his studio. But he didn't use a lot of musicians. He did most of his stuff. It was like the beginning of MIDI, like synthesis and all that stuff. So he had Performer, which was the precursor to Digital Performer, and then he had ADAT machines. And so he would do these things where he'd program all this stuff into keyboards, and then he would hit play on them, and then you'd go, okay, here's the chord chart, and you just play along, and we'll record it. And in that scenario, if you make a mistake, you have to start over again. Like, you couldn't do it, so. And a lot of times he just wanted me to improvise. So one time he had this really long jam thing that was an underscore for this movie, this documentary, I think, on James Dean. And it was like A minor, and, had this A minor thing. It could just solo, just do fills and stuff like that. And so I had my rig, and I was plugged in, and, I'm doing, okay. And he goes, pretty soon it's going to go to C minor, I think right about here. And then it goes C minor, and I'm like, changing to C minor on the fly. And he goes, yeah, I think it's going to go to D minor here. oh no, here. Yeah. And so it goes to D minor, and I'm like, and I'm doing the very thing I told you not to do, which was move scales around. But I'm just trying to like give it a live, like there's a guitar player playing on top of this, and not playing flashy necessarily, but just, and as soon as I would get comfortable in the key, it would change, and there was not like, it wasn't 8 bars and 8 bars and 8 bars. It was like 10 bars and then 52 bars and then 4 bars and then 73 bars and then 12 bars and then 11 bars. It was completely unpredictable. He was just, I actually saw him do music for a, for a, for a Mexican soap opera. Keep in mind, it'd be like an hour program or 30-minute program every day. And so they had to create music. And so he would have a Fender Rhodes sound up. He'd have the show on. He'd have the tape recorder going. And he'd just be watching the show, not understanding a word they're saying. And if they looked angry, he'd play angry chords. And if they looked lovey-dovey, he'd play happy chords. And if they looked confused, they'd play confused chords. And so he would just do this. Sometimes he'd do one hand while he was making coffee with the other. Or he'd be on the phone and he'd have the sound muted. And he'd just like, unfreaking believable. And he would create music like this, for the, and I would just sit there and watch him do this and be amazed. And then, but this one time that was one of the times where I didn't know, I couldn't think, there was no way to think. Like, he wouldn't even, like, one time when we were working on this, it was like, there were a bunch of cues and they were long cues, like 5-minute cues. So if I messed up, we'd have to start over again. Or if I hit some really heinous note, he'd go, okay, let's do that one again. And I'm like, oh man. So it's like, okay, how long was it in A minor? And goes down to G minor and then C minor and then D minor and then B flat minor. And you're like, you're trying to keep up. And sometimes he would leave the room and I'd be like, what's the next chord, Tom? And he'd be like, maybe B minor. He'd be making coffee in the other room. And it'd go to C minor and I'd be like off it. And it's like, oh, I made it work. It was it was a freaking education. I mean, I was learning some. And the funny thing about that, I remember never getting paid for that session. And then here's what's crazy on that. His manager said, BMI has this weird little designation. BMI is one of the PROs, Performing Rights Organizations, and I'm a BMI member. I think Tom was a BMI member too. Maybe he was ASCAP. And there's CSAC, ASCAP, and BMI. Those are the 3 main ones in the U.S. So the only three ones, I think. CSAC's getting bigger and bigger all the time. But I'm BMI. I'm BMI because the Beatles were BMI. So if it's good enough for the Beatles, it's good enough for me. So so he heard this little weird loophole that if the music is being performed on TV, so this is music that was going to be in a documentary that was going to be on PBS multiple times. Probably aired several times during prime time and then several times at 2 a.m. kind of thing. And Tom would get these stacks of statements from BMI that were on the computer paper that had the teared off edges. Remember the holes on the side? You would tear them off. You would have and they'd be connected. So you could literally have one continuous piece of paper. And he had a stack like 200 pages of royalties, and it would be like 10 cents in Topeka, Kansas, and 5 cents in this place, blah, blah, blah. But when it got to the bottom, it was like 20 grand every quarter from BMI or ASCAP. And, but his manager said, hey, if the piece was a live performance piece, if we can put it down that it was a live performance piece, it makes 4 times the royalty. I was like, what? So that thing that we did in the studio, we went to a bar. He rented a bar off hours, so it was just the 2 of us. And I think his manager was sitting there. And he brought everything, and he brought his keyboards and everything, and his racks. It was like a huge deal to bring all this crap. I think I helped him. I think that's what. And he would sit there, and he just hit play on the MIDI and pretended to play. I had my guitar set up, and I went ahead and played over it, kind of improvising like I did before. And now that technically that registered piece was now a performance piece. It had been. But it wasn't the recording we used, but I guess they didn't know that. I have no idea. I don't remember. I think they did take some pictures. I would love to see some pictures from that. But they were trying to prove that, so that on the cue sheet they could put live performance or something. And if it was live performance, it would pay, instead of 15 cents here in this city, it would pay 60 cents. And then instead of being $20,000, it would be $80,000 at the end of at the end of the statement, or something like that. I don't think it worked out that way. I'm not sure how. We never did it again, so I'm assuming it wasn't. Either they didn't allow it or it didn't really do that. But oh my gosh, that was crazy. And what was the name of the place? Well, probably doesn't exist anymore with COVID. Everything's gone. It was on Ventura Boulevard, country club like place. Shoot, I can't remember what it's called. But we went during off. Like I said, we went to off hours. So the bartender was over there getting the bar prep for the day. And then it was just me and Tom set up in the room. So it was like we're putting on a little concert for nobody. That was crazy. Tom was a crazy guy. I mean, we had a lot of fun. And he really tried to get us to move to Nashville with him. But I just didn't want to start over again. And I didn't want to go someplace where the style of music was something I wasn't very good at. I have no idea. But if I would have succeeded. One of the people that moved with them at the same time was a guy named Buddy Miller, who's a great singer-songwriter. And he immediately got successful writing big hits. In fact, I think he wrote one of the best titled songs in country music I've ever heard. It was called Does My Ring Burn Your Finger? Such a great title. And so that was one of the few people there. And Tom, I think, got there right away in town. What he did was the number one guy for arranging in Nashville was Ron Huff, and I think he charged like $1,500 to do a string arrangement or something like that. So Tom came into town from L.A., and they were kind of the early people from L.A., but people from L.A. were kind of looked down upon, probably still in Nashville. And he came in and started charging $1,750 for arrangements, and he got really busy. It was pretty crazy how busy he got. So anyway, I guess you're listening to the story because you haven't commented, you haven't chatted in quite a while. Is chat not working? The stream seems to be in good health. Let me see if the stream has ever dipped down. Nope, the stream is good. Charlie Pride. No, I thought that was, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that wasn't the song. Because it wouldn't be that old of a song, because Woody, see if I can, if there's a Wikipedia. Well, you're right. There's a Charlie. Does my ring hurt your finger? Okay, so Buddy and Julie Miller, Does My Ring Burn Your Finger? That was and then so it's Burn. Who covered it originally? Does My Ring Burn Your Finger? Yeah, it was songwriters Buddy Miller and Julie Miller. Frank Liddell produced it. Oh, Leanne Womack. They wrote several songs for Leanne Womack, I think. Buddy Miller, let's see. So he was a touring guitar. He toured with, his wife was a Christian artist. And then the crazy thing is, get this, he tours with his band, and sometimes his harmonica player is Robert Plant. Yes, that Robert Plant. It's hilarious to see Buddy Miller up there doing his songs, and you have Robert Plant in the back playing harmonica. I mean, freaking, you're cool when. And Buddy's a great guy, and he was one of the first people I knew that had a studio in his house. 95, so that would have been, Sacred Cows, 75. He moved to Austin, moved to New York City. Buddy Miller Band, which included songwriter Strong Colvin. I did not know that. And now Jim Lauderdale, he's been working with forever. Then they moved to Nashville in the 90s. See, it's so funny because they don't mention the fact that they lived in South Pasadena, but I knew him in South Pasadena for quite a while. He was born in Ohio near Dayton. And then they settled in Princeton, New Jersey. Let's see. Then he moved to Austin. Yeah, that makes sense, Austin. And I remember when I met him, he lived in Austin, and it was like, oh, cool, Austin City Limits. That's what everybody said when they heard Austin. And yeah, Buddy is a nice guy. I haven't seen Buddy in forever. We've talked recently. A good friend of mine is Joel is very good friends with Buddy, and they talk all the time. And I've never been to Nashville. If I ever go to Nashville, we'll try to look up Buddy and Julie because they're the sweetest people. Really like them a lot. She had a really cool voice, and could have been really big. But look up Buddy and Julie Miller. I think if you're into kind of alt country, they're really good. He played with Emmylou Harris for years. I saw her live. He toured as part of the Robert Plant Alison Krauss band. Toured with Patty Griffin, Gillian Welsh, Emmylou Harris with that Sweet Harmony thing, David Rawlings, Union Station. He was part of that group. He's touring. He's done a lot of touring, record producing, session work. He's produced albums including Richard Thompson, Sean Colvin, Devil Makes Three, Alison Moore, Wood Brothers. Most of these I haven't heard of. Oh, that's right. I forgot he signed on to do it. For a while, he was the music producer for Nashville, the TV show. He did two seasons as that. It was pretty cheesy. I think he probably didn't like doing that. They won a bunch of Americana Music Awards, Grammy Award. They won a Best Traditional Gospel Album. Downtown Church, I actually have that record. Oh, no, I have United House of Prayer. Yeah, I don't have Downtown Church. He uses the vintage Wandery electric guitars, which are the plastic Italian ones. And he talks about that. He talks about just bringing glue with him on the road, super glue, so he can put them back together. Let's see. We got a lot of comments here. Blah, blah, blah. It's working. Good stories. Working. All good here. We're enjoying the stories, listening and enjoying. We are practicing. Good practice. Yeah, please do that. Great song. Oh, yeah, that's a great song title. I am so old. I'm the only one here who was around in the 60s. Eek. No, I was around the 60s. I was born in 61. Yeah, you're a kid compared to Schumann. Let's see. You're as young as you feel, until you die. And everyone's the same age at that point. Let's see. Yeah, there's a lot of people on this. Oh, AJ, you're 58. Okay, I didn't know that. Keith, you're 75. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, my mother-in-law's 83, and she could be 43. She runs, she does so much. I don't, Although the thing is, when the older you get, one injury can knock you back, man. And I even had tennis elbow, and I couldn't play tennis for a year and a half, and that really slowed me down. Like gut and all that stuff, anyway. So okay, Monday we'll probably continue to talk about soloing, just thoughts on soloing. I don't know how to get really specific about it. Maybe I will formulate some kind of. We could do a jam along with Tom thing. We can. I could do that with the A minor vamp. We could do that. That's kind of like my videos that I did. And then maybe what I'll do is do a lick. One of the problems with the videos, the jam along with Tom, that I might change in future ones. I know Vito went through them and really liked them, and I've had some people say, "Are you going to do more?" One of the problems with that is that the chord progressions, I would do a lick, and then when you echo me, it's over a different chord, so it has a different sound. So I really probably, unfortunately, need to do more pad type jams where we're working on a specific scale or something over a pad, because if you're going to imitate me, I want it to sound the same when you're hitting, you're imitating me in the next bar as it did when I did it. Either that or sit on chords longer. I could sit, like 4 bars of A7 and 4 bars of D7, something like that, and then maybe that would work. Creating guitar parts, incorporating chords and lines. Yeah, do I know how to do that? I don't know if I had to do that. Oh, 40. Leo, you're a punk. You're a punk kid. I know Vito's a punk kid too, so. Yeah, Ed, that's so true, isn't it? I mean, I remember, so many of the feelings and emotions of 18 and 19 and 20. For me, it was really tough because I wanted to be in LA. So it was tough in LA too, but it was easier than having something that was out of reach and literally out of reach. So I turned 60 next July, so I'll be 60 next July. We celebrated my birthday. I did a live stream on my birthday, remember? So yeah, Monday I'll probably continue to talk about soloing. Maybe we'll do some play along. Maybe I don't know. We'll because what I might do is like if I formulate something like a theme and variations or melodic thing, or maybe even a song that we can do. Oh, this is a melody to a song, or we can take a song. But see, I gotta be careful using actual real songs. But if we make up a melody over a song, and it's like give you guys a homework assignment of trying to come up with some kind of variations on the melody. You can do that with any song, so that's always a good thing. So, all right. So I am going to sign off. I hope everyone is well. Stay safe. And then we had a good view. We had a good showing. I see. Looks like it peaked at 35. That's pretty good. All right. God bless you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I will talk to you hopefully Monday at 9 a.m. Western time. Pacific time. Okay. All right. We'll talk soon. Bye bye.